In 1945, an Austrian economist wrote an article of barely 20 pages that changed the way we understand economics forever. His name was Friedrich Hayek. And his question was devastatingly simple. Imagine an earthquake destroys a tin mine in Bolivia. Suddenly, there's less tin in the world. Who needs to know? Who needs to react? The correct answer is millions of people. Canned food manufacturers, solder producers, electronics companies. Every tin user on the planet needs to adjust their behavior. But here's the extraordinary part. None of them needs to know there was an earthquake in Bolivia. None of them needs to know anything about mines or geology. They only need to see one thing. The price of tin has gone up. With that single figure, every person in the chain receives all the information they need. Those who can use a substitute will. Those who can't will pay more. Producers of other metals will increase their output. And the entire system readjusts without anyone directing it. Price is a signal. And it's the most powerful signal in economics. In the 2 previous episodes, we discovered Adam Smith's invisible hand and Marshall's supply and demand scissors. We saw how prices form at the point where buyers and sellers meet. But a price is not just a number that determines how much you pay. It's a communication system. It carries information about scarcity, about the preferences of millions of people, about production conditions on the other side of the planet. Today we're going to explore that idea. And we're going to see what happens when someone tries to interfere with the signal. Hayek's article was titled The Use of Knowledge in Society and was published in the American Economic Review in 1945. In 2011, the journal included it among the 20 best articles of its first 100 years. Hayek's central question was this. How is it possible for an economy with millions of participants to function in a coordinated way when no person, no office, no computer possesses all the necessary information? Economic knowledge, Hayek argued, is dispersed. The farmer in Andalusia knows how many olives he's produced this year. The importer in Japan knows how much olive oil his customers want. The shipper in Rotterdam knows what a sea freight costs this week. But none of the 3 knows what the other 2 know. And yet, somehow, olive oil gets from Andalusia to Tokyo in the right quantity, at the right price, at the right time. Hayek's answer was that prices act as intermediaries. They condense all that dispersed information into a single number. And that number is enough for each participant to make the right decision without needing complete knowledge. It's a decentralized communication system that works with astonishing efficiency. Millions of messages compressed into figures. For price signals to work, you need to understand a concept that lies behind every economic decision you make. It's called opportunity cost. The cost of something is not just what you pay for it. It's what you give up by choosing it. If you decide to go to university for 4 years, the cost isn't just tuition and books. It's also the salary you would have earned working during those 4 years. If you decide to go to the movies, the cost isn't just the ticket. It's the dinner you could have prepared, the book you could have read, the nap you could have taken. Every choice means giving up something. And the value of what you give up is the true cost. Market prices reflect opportunity costs. When steel becomes more expensive, it's not just that producing steel costs more. It's that the resources used to produce steel, the energy, the ore, the labor, have alternative uses that have become more valuable. The price system, when it works correctly, channels resources toward where they generate the most value. Not because someone decides, but because prices signal it. But what happens when someone decides the price is too high or too low and tries to fix it by decree? A price ceiling is a maximum price set by the government. You can't charge more. The intention is usually good. Protect consumers. Make something essential affordable. But the consequences are predictable. The most studied example is New York City rent control. Since 1943, various forms of control have limited how much landlords can raise rent on certain apartments. The idea was to protect tenants in a city where housing is scarce. And for tenants who already have a regulated apartment, it works. They pay rents far below market rates. But the side effect is devastating. If the maximum rent is below the equilibrium price, landlords have no incentive to build new apartments or maintain existing ones. The housing supply shrinks. Waiting lists grow. And a black market emerges where people pay bribes or illegal premiums to access a regulated apartment. The end result is a cruel paradox, a city where regulated apartments are cheap but non-existent, and unregulated apartments are expensive precisely because the supply is strangled. The Swedish economist Assar Lindbeck went so far as to say that, apart from bombing, rent control is the most effective method known for destroying a city. But this doesn't mean all economists agree. Some studies suggest that well-designed rent controls, with exceptions for new construction, can protect vulnerable tenants without destroying supply. The empirical debate remains open. A price floor is the opposite. It's a minimum price below which you can't sell. The most important example is the minimum wage. Classical theory predicts that a minimum wage above market equilibrium creates unemployment. If you force an employer to pay €12 an hour when the market would pay 8, the employer will hire fewer workers. There will be people willing to work for €8 who won't find jobs. That was the theoretical prediction for decades. Until, in 1994, two Princeton economists, David Card and Alan Krueger, published a study that shook the profession. They compared fast food restaurants in New Jersey, which had raised its minimum wage, with neighboring restaurants in Pennsylvania, which hadn't. If classical theory was correct, New Jersey restaurants should have reduced staff. They didn't. Employment held steady or even rose slightly. The study was controversial, criticized, and replicated dozens of times. But the results held up in many contexts. In 2021, David Card received the Nobel Prize in Economics in part for this work. Does this mean the minimum wage never destroys jobs? No. It means the relationship is more complex than the simple theory suggests. A moderate minimum wage can have little effect on employment. A very high one probably does. Where the exact threshold lies depends on the context. What is clear is that the real economy is more complicated than the supply and demand diagram. And when dogma clashes with data, it's the data that wins. If interfering with one price produces distortions, what happens when a government tries to control all prices? The Soviet Union tried it for 70 years. Gosplan, the central planning agency, had the task of coordinating the production of an entire country. How many shoes to manufacture? How many tons of steel to produce? How much bread to bake? But Gosplan didn't have market prices to signal what to produce. Prices were set by decree. And without the signal, decisions were made blind. The result was a system riddled with absurdities. Nail factories, measured by weight, produced a few enormous, useless nails. Measured by quantity, they produced millions of tiny, equally useless nails. There were surpluses of heavy machinery nobody needed and chronic shortages of basic consumer goods. The queues were the most visible symbol of failure. When the price can't rise to balance supply with demand, scarcity manifests in another way, standing in line for hours. The price you don't pay in money, you pay in time. Hayek had predicted it in 1945. Without free prices, no planner can access the information needed to allocate resources efficiently. The knowledge is in millions of minds, and only the price system can gather it. Venezuela offers a more recent example. Starting in 2003, the government imposed price controls on basic foods, medicines, and other essential products. The intention was to make them affordable. The result was widespread shortages, a thriving black market, and a humanitarian crisis. When the price tells lies, the economy loses its bearings. The debate over price controls isn't abstract. It affects real people every day. In cities where housing gets more expensive, entire families are forced to move farther and farther from the center, spending hours commuting that they could dedicate to their children, to education, to rest. When food prices rise in a developing country, the poorest families spend 70 or 80% of their income on eating. A 20% increase in the price of wheat can mean a child drops out of school because they have to work. And when a government sets artificially low prices, producers stop producing and the shortage hits precisely the most vulnerable, who can't access the black market or stockpile reserves. Prices are signals. But behind every signal there are people. And the challenge for any society is to respect the information prices convey without forgetting that there are human needs the market, on its own, cannot meet. 3 ideas to take away from this episode. First, prices are a decentralized communication system. They carry information about scarcity, preferences, and opportunity costs. Hayek showed that no central planner can substitute for that function. Second, price controls, ceilings and floors, distort market signals. Ceilings create shortages. Floors create surpluses. But the real effects are more complex than the simple theory predicts, as the minimum wage research demonstrated. Third, when all prices are controlled, as in the Soviet Union, the economic system loses its ability to coordinate. Scarcity and waste become the norm. Prices transmit signals. But not all signals are received the same way. When the price of insulin doubles, diabetics keep buying it. They have no choice. When the price of a vacation doubles, people stay home. That difference in response has a name: elasticity. And it's the key to understanding why governments tax tobacco but not bread. That's next time.